Hello. Yeah, we'll get started. Trust me, I tend to run panels wherever I am be in a very impromptu way. We just had the title between us. There's no pre-brief. There are no questions. So let it be free-flowing. I made few mental notes right here, but that also I'm setting down. Don't need it. Especially with the two gentlemen that I'm with, they need no introduction. With Rahul, I've had enough overlap. I would easily say one of the best experiences I've had in my lifetime, pairing with someone from the management side who, understands tech, enables, empowers, and so on. So, really lot of creational juices flew in that those time frame. They'll have not worked personally, but I have seen enough proxies of what you have done in SWiggy and what you are attempting right now. And there's a reason why you both are here sitting next to me more than anyone else. Really respect you a lot. And that's why I felt and the audience out here would probably have a lot more takeaways when we go through this conversation. I think let's start with the first question, not even a question. We have been talking about this word individual contributor, right? I want to hear about that part of your life, which probably not everyone knows as much. When long back you were individual contributors, can you just walk me through that journey of what kind of an individual contributor you were, right? Go back in those times. What did you love? What did you not love? Let's start with that.
All right. So good morning, everyone. So I started long back. I won't talk about the time because then it will date how old I am. But when I started as an engineer, and my individual contribution was really very much building code. I moved to the US, and similar to that example that you talked about, like a lot of the work there was to essentially build enterprise solutions, migrate code from A to B, from technology X to technology Y. But in that journey, I think what I really enjoyed is really going not just on the technology, but also understanding the why behind it. And I found myself automatically moving to a place where I used to always ask, why is this important? What does the customer need? What is the reason we are doing this project? And so in that journey, I ended up kind of becoming this pseudo technical functional person, where I did my MBA in the US and then eventually moved to Amazon there. There, I was an IC as a TPM, technical program manager. Any TPMs in the room here? Oh, wow. Totally outnumbered by
There's
all the
one.
engineers.
There's one there.
Oh, the TPMs are not raising their hands. They're all too afraid to acknowledge their presence. Okay, there's
There's
awesome.
one.
So TPM is another job family, which is a technical functional family. And in the US, it was like the pseudo technical architect role. You didn't have these architects, but you had people who were supposed to take the business requirements and map it out to systems and then work with engineers to solve for them. So I did that for a bunch of time. And then eventually there was a kind of a fork in the road where I could become more of this or grow into becoming a people leader. And that's the path I chose in Amazon.
Yeah. Rahul?
Uh, Thanks, UT. Already made us feel like outsiders. First, he said, the best person I worked from the management
Management
side.
side. I heard that. I noticed, right? I saw he put you in that the box.
Yeah.
First was management side, like already crossed over to the dark side. Second, he said, long back when you were an IC, it's already two demerits already against our name. Thanks a lot for that.
So let's read him.
No, it's right. I think so. I started my career back in 2000. I don't mind revealing my age. I graduated in the US and started there. Uh, my IC life as a individual engineer was all in embedded C, and then Java. Uh, pivotal points were actually hearing your opening note, and I think it is important from the context of what we are discussing today. When I started my career back in 2000, uh, I had an extremely bad mentor and I had an extremely good manager, right? And I give those two examples because you spoke about your manager being somebody that you really look up to. Same thing here. I had an extremely good manager, but a really bad mentor at that point. 6 months into the project that I was working on, I actually walked into my manager's office and told him that, look, this is not working out. Change my project. And I gave him the reasons of why, and without getting into the details of it. He made one decision that was, in my view, super critical for my career, not just as a IC, but I think it also defined a large part about who I am as a uh, manager, right? He said that, look, if you're up to it, why don't I do this? You stick on to this project. I will move the mentor out. You take over. And this was 6 months into my job. It wasn't a small project, and I don't know what he saw because I hadn't delivered that much. And he gave that project to me, right? And that really defined my I wouldn't say career, but the way I operated as a IC. And also going forward, I did well in that project. It was fairly successful. From then on, I started getting significantly important work in the organization. And I think what it helped me as a person is start looking at individuals and saying that if the person is right for it, don't look at whether he's been experienced, whether he has so much behind him or not, but trust the person to deliver and empower them much more. And it's a way that I think I still operate in. So great run. I've never done my MBA, so I didn't cross over to the dark side. Sorry, Dale. Much more of a natural progression. I'm what they call a reluctant entrepreneur. So I worked in the embedded software space for the longest period of time, where the what I call as the cycle of learning is extremely slow. Like projects run into at least a year, if not more. Then you actually go into delivery cycles. Then that's another year before you start hearing back from the client, because their ability to put this out into production takes a long period of time. Uh, Obviously, the internet had already broken out and was bringing out much more. Google had happened. This is so when I started, Google didn't exist. So I really wanted to cross over into the consumer internet space, but because of my experience, I couldn't break into that. I didn't get a job from Google or anybody else, so that's how I started my entrepreneurial journey, and started our first company together, me and Samir, and then got acquired by Flipkart. Yeah, that's really been my IC journey. Once I came into Flipkart, I think hardly coded. I tried. Then people like UT, Shantanu, Anuj, all were there. They said that you're a crap coder, so please stick to the management side. And since then, I've been a manager, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think because we are building the story forward, and you yourself have experience in IC role play, if you had to qualify probably two traits that you really admire in ICs, and one or two traits that you know are more generalized around ICs that you know they exist. The reason I'm asking this is probably we need to be cognizant of that before we see what can organizations and the ecosystem can do to make ICs leverageable. So two positive qualities and two traits, I'll not say negative qualities, but two traits that you have to work with around ICs.
Uh, Look, I think the positive qualities that I genuinely admire is very strong intellectual honesty. The word I actually like the word I in it. When you're saying that you don't like, the reason I like it is it brings a clarity that the buck stops with you. You as an individual are the decision maker, and you as the individual have the complete. The buck stops with you means the decision maker as well as the accountability. So without fear of trying to either manage egos or please anybody else, you should have the intellectual honesty to say this is good, this is bad, this is ugly, whether it's in your code or somebody else's code. And I think that's an extremely important thing that I look forward to in ICs. And I can talk about a little later maybe about how the organization, for example, at PhonePe, I try to actually imbibe that. Shantanu does it, etc. The second one is being extremely first principles. And programming languages come and go. Gen AI is here right now, but being strong on first principles, what is the right design? What are the design choices? What is the stack that you need to use? All of that, extremely important. I think sometimes we tend to actually move away from first principles and get into a mode of delivery. But having that first principles thing, I think, is an extremely important trait. I think the ones that when you say work around are let's call it development factors, so that I don't
Yeah, the management lingo.
is there's a very strong tendency with that intellectual honesty to actually have a sense of saying that how I do things is the right way, and two ICs never really think that the other one's code is equally good or better, right? And it's just a fact. So it's very easy to point out flaws in somebody else's code and think that yours is the best. And I think that getting over that to say that there is a reason why something is the way it is and it has been working, and taking a forward view of fixing it versus saying that I'm going to actually rip this off and build it grounds up, I think is a common trait that I see that needs to be something that you need to be conscious about and not try to over index on.
Got
Yeah.
it. They'll probably that part is more relevant in your stint at Swiggy and
Yeah.
even erstwhile. Those traits that you need to work around with. Rahul mentioned one. Any other thing?
Yeah, I think I mean it's great points, by the way, like super important points, and all of us should take notes. The things that I've also seen, in addition to intellectual honesty, is curiosity. Something which I really think is distinguishes for me a great IC from an average one is somebody who's just very curious, and you'll see this in how they speak and the number of topics that they have knowledge about. They may be curious about something which is so random, like how does space work and how does space time work, and that person is able to talk about it because in their head they're always taking random facts and they're processing it, and that intellectual curiosity is what allows them to get over any kind of technical problem, because they don't feel limited by this is what I learned, this is what I'll do. It's today is this, tomorrow is something else, third day something else, and that flexibility is something where when you find people being able to cover different topics in different conversations, you know they are intellectually very smart. So curiosity is one thing that I really look for. The piece in terms of what to work around, I think you described it very well. It's that strong opinions, strongly held. We used to call this in Amazon, where you want to be strong opinions but weakly held, which means that you want to have a point of view. Coming into the meeting, you should be able to tell why you think about something, but you should also be able to change your mind when faced with new information. The ability for you to be able to take data, process it, and in real time change your opinion is a superpower that we used to look for in Amazon. And we used to call it strong opinions, weakly held. In many times, you have strong opinions strongly held where people will come and say, this is what I think it is. But then, despite somebody else saying new information, maybe a 3 hour design review, they're still holding on to their point because they believe that they are right. And that's actually a very, very big red flag for me when I look at ICs. So that's something to think about. The other thing, which is a little more maybe early on when you see junior ICs, is people start from a solution backward and then try to find the problem to fit it. कि मेरे पास ये है, I want to build this particular platform that will do coupon management and will send automatic recommendation, blah, blah, blah. And now let me go figure out who wants it. And I used to see this a lot because people get excited by the solution, some new technology, some new system, some new business idea that they want to implement, but don't really spend enough time saying who will use it, whether it's actually relevant, whether there are 1,000 people who have already built something like this. Are you rebuilding Kafka or should you just be using Kafka? So those are things where I feel sometimes a lot of engineers get caught up in the joy of building, and sometimes that may make them over-engineer problems when maybe there are more simple problem solutions out there. So that's like another thing. Again, a long discussion, huge examples, but I'll pause.
Well, I think it's an awesome point. In Flipkart, we used to say, right, we had that problem also. Tech for the sake of tech. I mean, we had every damn data store that was there available in Redis, Mongo, jo bhi tha, everything would be there
Ouch.
because we want to try it out without thinking of whether who's going to manage this. When an outage happens, do we have the expertise? 10 different data stores. So tech for the sake of tech versus actually saying that what's the end problem? What we already have as a stack characterize for solving that problem well, and then experimentation not for the sake of it but to say that we want to actually solve something that is not solved today. I think that's a
Yeah.
very important point that
Yeah. I think I'll pick on two things that you just mentioned. See, the reason there are many interpretations to this word called individual, and that's why there are two different dimensions to how we are looking at it. Uh, in terms of ownership, accountability, I respect the individual tag. But where the nuance that you both touched upon is because you're very strongly opinionated, sometimes biased, hang on to your views. That's where the individual part of it also brings, holds you back. And this is the rung that I wanted to quickly touch upon, that yes, you start off in junior IC, you graduate and you become a lot more elevated in terms of your roles and responsibility going forward. But at a certain level, your individual accountability should also be convergence. Maybe in the room, you are separating thoughts from, let's say, three SD3s, fours, architect, junior architects, even. And if you are the most seasoned IC in that room and you do not drive the path towards convergence, that to me diminishes your role as an individual. There you need to be slightly larger, bigger picture, and think of you or yourself as a thought leader too. And that's where the boundary of individualism tries to spread out. And that's the spectrum that I wanted to touch upon next. As you see individual contributors graduate, you can be an IC throughout your life, absolutely fine. But in terms of your outlook and orientation, you need to start unlocking your role in the organization a bit more. So can you talk about the spectrum? Otherwise, people tend to always, sometimes I've seen enough ICs who tend to be those labeled ICs. Give me specs. I'll write the most beautiful piece of software, but not beyond that. Right? As you go up, you probably have something more to give back to. And that's the thought leadership, convergence, and whatnot.
No, 100%. I think the rockstar engineer who can actually deliver really fast versus IC leader, I think there's a difference.
Yeah.
I think I still believe from the points that I mentioned or Dale mentioned as a role becomes extremely important. But what you're talking about is really leadership qualities. And my strong belief is that, and it's extremely important because there is this general thing that leadership means you go into management, right? And that's been a more unfortunate traditional view. ICs is a leadership role as you grow, and bringing convergence, bringing what you call as thought leadership is extremely important. Not having the dogma of saying that I know what is best and I can do this better. Breaking that dogma and trying to actually be somebody who carries everybody along, very, very important, even as an IC. I think where organizations falter and why even good ICs are unable to actually cross that path of being what you call as a thought leader, driving convergence and decision making, is a very strong information asymmetry that gets created between management and the IC track. If your leadership on the IC side, whether it is your architect, senior architects, your chief architect, your entire organization that is an IC organization, one is lockstep on leadership in the organization, wherein you're saying that that role goes all the way to the top, and therefore the entire organization also one recognizes that this is a leadership role and grows all the way to the top and doesn't have a ceiling beyond which the growth is only on the management side. Two, there is no information asymmetry, which means effectively what brings conversions on decision making or to actually have a set of people move faster in a particular area better is the fact that they know what they're working towards.
Right.
What are the business goals? What are the numbers? What is the P&L? What is the P&L impact? What are we really solving for the customer? Many times organizations, even when they recognize this IC track, create a gulf of information between the management track and this one.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, and you actually treat the IC role equal footing as the management role, where they have complete information symmetry on the state of affairs as a business, as your end clientele, what we are solving for, I genuinely believe that they are the best problem solvers who will actually converge on the fastest solution and the best solution. If you don't have that, then they are basically what you're trying to refer to as silos of excellence, and they will do what they think is best according to themselves. So I think that is the problem. I think it is more on the organization side to be creating the scaffolding of how to actually treat this role at par and create equal information footing, and not really on the IC themselves. The ones that you're talking about are exceptions. And I think those exceptions have to be treated differently. You'll have to utilize that strength differently. But I think that is more an exception than the norm.
Fair. Yeah.
Interesting. When I think about what ICs can do as they grow, I actually go back to the point you mentioned about force multipliers. And I frankly think that's the biggest leverage that you can deliver. There's only so much of code you can write. With AI, you can write a lot more code, but not necessarily great code. But you can write code, and that's one level of impact when you start out. And then you start to do system design, and then you do services and boundaries, and maybe you get a little more high level. And eventually you go to architecture, where now you get to design large architectural systems. But not everybody can get the opportunity to redesign platforms. I mean, like even if you join a company, it's not that they'll say, rebuild my platform. So in that world, how does an IC grow? How does an IC become more influential in the organization? I think the other way to think about it is to how do you help become a force multiplier for ICs within the community? For example, rather than becoming this person who is seen as a strong opinion, strongly held, how do you become a person where people seek you out for inputs, for design inputs, for system inputs, for looking at certain areas that they may need help on? How do you become someone where people see as a natural leader, but from a technical competence standpoint? And that's, I think, a place where if people focus not really about how do I grow myself, but also how do I make my team become smarter, more capable, then you will see that they also emerge as leaders. And to Rahul's point, maybe every org may not have the structures to allow you to become a formal leader, like a distinguished ABC, but there are informal structures that exist in every org. In every team, people know whom to go to for a certain problem. In every team, people know who is the most qualified engineer that they can seek out when things break in production. So informal structures also exist where if you start to be a force multiplier, you can also create your influence and grow in terms of impact in the organization.
Yeah, so I think,
I think just
yeah,
I think Dale made a very, very important point on impact orientation versus I think how you actually look at your best talent uh, on any track. If it is impact orientation versus pure input orientation, I think is a huge deal. This term that he calls in PhonePe, the architects organization is a parallel organization to the management, all the way to the top, and it rolls up into him as the chief architect. He calls the architect organization the janitorial organization, and very openly about it because they clean up a lot of mess. But in doing so, they ensure both negative impact is not there and there's accelerated positive impact. For example, from a PhonePe context, uh, uh, 10 basis points increase in a success rate or a 20 basis points increase in success rate may not be the most exciting work, but it's one of the most difficult things to achieve and has the highest impact. If that impact orientation as an organization, especially on the IC track, is towards that, I think a lot of decision making, etc., will automatically converge towards faster decision making, more collaborative approach. If we actually end up trying to actually measure, which at a particular period of time in Flipkart we were doing, where it was very strong, we used to say only what is the architecture skills or design skills and not really the impact skills from a business perspective. I think you start engineering an IC towards trying to continuously platform, re-platform, platform thinking, building new platforms without thinking what is the enterprise value that it's creating.
Yeah, I think many organizations, even in Flipkart, we have enough stories where so-called competency frameworks were continuously evolved. And to your point around impact, I think there was a point in time where we started ignoring the input metrics and saying that after this point in time, let's say you are already good at coding, design, architecture, but I want you to be impactful. I want to see proxies of it and forget all the input metrics, right? If you are impactful, you add value to the organization, that you are growing into the individual contributor as a leader and thought leader, and that in some way helps. I quickly want to blend in the trait in the conversation that we're having. See, it might be a bias, it might be generalization or overgeneralization. ICs also are inherently a bit passive, introverts. Today you'll see most of the practitioners speak. We had to do a lot of dress rehearsals so that they become better orators. Architects, evolved ones, they get to speak a lot more and they are very polished. And the point that I want to make is that when we try to position them as thought leaders, it needs some kind of a conversation media. All right. People who are passive, people who are introvert, they are naturally not oriented to do all of that. So have you seen that, or is it an overgeneralization? Because if you leave it to them, probably they will not evolve into a thought leader. Maybe there is a push and pull that might have to happen through leaders, through organizations, so that ecosystem, obviously break the information asymmetry, but then expose them. Maybe in that experiential way, they will, come out, talk a lot more, right? So is that trait also in some way, inhibiting them?
I'll go first on this. I'm actually passionate about this. I think there is this misconception that you have to be a good speaker to be a leader. I think that's the problem with everything where we expect if you can speak well, you're a leader. If you're quiet, then you cannot be a leader. And that is also correlating to extroverts can be leaders, introverts cannot be leaders. I mean, I grew up, my technical background, I would say, was basically founded when in Amazon back in 2007 when I was joined. And it was a very different company there, but it was a company of extreme introverts that people wrote.
Yeah.
And the way you would influence and lead was by documents, not through sitting up. In fact, in the meeting, when we would start the meeting, they would hand out the physical hard copy of the document. And for the first 15 minutes, pin drop silence. And this was a meeting where even Jeff Bezos would sit quietly and read. Not one person would stand up and start pointing to a slide and talking. People read the entire 6-page document, word to word, line to line. Then the person who authored it will just say any questions, and page by page, we would go and answer. The document did the talking, didn't need to have this oratory skills or speech. So I think, of course, when we look at our general thing, we look at a leader on TV and say, "Are the person can give a good speech, so obviously you have to speak well." So I feel like when people say you have to be if an introvert you can't be a leader, then I like feel like that's not right, because it's about what medium you choose. In the world that we are operating in tech, you can still choose to write great blogs, you can still choose to write great detailed work and submit that. And a lot of people will read your blogs and a lot of people will comment. And people will see you as a technical leader for the writing skills you have. So I would just actually push back on that, thinking, please start everybody, start practicing your speaking skills. I would say start developing mastery in what you do, and then choose the medium that works for you. If you are good at writing and you're able to think slowly and write your thoughts out, then do that. If you are good at being able to stand up and speak, then do that. But I don't think it's one way or the other.
Okay.
No, 100% agreed. I think oratory skills as an IC, especially in the early years, is, I think, overrated. You don't need to necessarily uh, uh, be that. But being an introvert means that you will not you will not express your work. I think that does should not happen. Like Dale mentioned, having good communication skills. There's nothing that I don't think there's anything like over communication, as long as it's not done for the pure sake of visibility. I think many times it's overplayed just for visibility in the organization. As long as it's not that, whatever you're building, if you're able to communicate so that there's broader usage of that in the organization, externally it can happen towards the open source community. Code can express that itself, right? Whether you can put stuff out there on your public GitHub profile, then write blogs or write good emails for the organization about using it, pages where people can collaborate and add more. I think there are multiple ways to express. And I think if there's an IC who goes down that track over time, they also start building the right oratory skills. I think as you grow in the organization, as you become an architect or a senior architect, I do believe that having the skill to be able to actually address a room is important. But what I've noticed as the larger set is a listening problem than a speaking problem. I think as architects grow, they need to actually listen more and communicate accordingly. I don't think speaking is a challenge, but totally agree with Dale that there are multiple ways. And I think purely oratory skills and trying to actually do public speaking is overrated.
Yeah, I
And
think
just give another recent example. So at Sahi, we're actually working with this influencer who's on Twitter, who has around 77,000 followers. And this person writes about deep information about the market in terms of technical analysis of, whatever option data and stuff. So we reached out saying, "Chalo, let's maybe work with them. Maybe you can build some content for us because we also want to focus on that." This is actually a kid behind that Twitter persona. This guy is a kid. I won't give his details, but he's a kid who's living in a village in Madhya Pradesh. And he actually does not want to be full time. In fact, he speaks only Hindi. Even with us, he's only speaking Hindi. He does farming in his spare time because he's in his village and that's what he loves to do. But he's so brilliant that he has mastered all the vibe coding tools, all the AI tools, and he's using that to convert his thoughts into written content and sharing it. And he's able to get 77,000 followers who are, and if you see his tweets, they all look like somebody who is very well spoken, somebody who knows the good English, vagara, vagara, right? But the tools now also exist where you can convert those thoughts in your head and use that to articulate what you think. You don't have to feel like you have a shortcoming or a disability just because you don't know the language. But there are people like that. And this is a real example of this 20-something-year-old kid who is now working with us just purely based on the technical excellence. He hasn't come on video even once. Once he came, but otherwise he's too shy to even come on video. Says, very polite, speaks like almost like, very differential, but brilliant. And so to his point, like he's able to bring his excellence out without requiring any kind of interpersonal skills.
I think it all comes down to your presence in the room more than the polished oration skills. And some of the traits that we just talked about just converges to your presence in the room. Be curious, be biased, but an ability to also have that parallel open-mindedness, drive convergence as you graduate upwards in the ladder, and be that decision maker, thought leader. If you can orient around all of those, I think ICs do not need to look up to their managers and that they're more polished, their documentation, they can give speeches, town halls, and so on. Your presence is what matters, whatever be the size of that room. One thing I would also touch upon before we wind up is I think like I said, we as leaders probably have practiced this philosophy and we believe in it. But running a larger sized organization, Rahul, for PhonePe, and I've seen that in Flipkart, and you can talk about SWiggy and now Sahi. Um, your individual beliefs is one thing, right? The culture is more bottom up. They are working with many personas, people who are oriented to be managers in a different way. I'm intensely bringing in managers because what you want to do with ICs, managers and through the rung, everyone has to reinforce that. ICs sometimes on their own do not step up, right? So that enablement, that empowerment, and creating that cultural ecosystem, that fabric is very important. And at its scale, if you want to practice it, are there any learnings that you've had that makes it repeatable, sustainable, rather than you preaching it and sometimes you preach, but on the ground it's all broken?
In fact, I think when Dale was at SWiggy, we had a discussion also about the organization structure for technology and IC. And then a lot of my learnings came from Flipkart.
Yeah.
And like you said, Flipkart has been a university. I think in this particular, for multiple areas, I think this particular one, with all honesty, I think we made a lot of mistakes at Flipkart. And I've been trying not to repeat those mistakes at PhonePe. I think one of the things that is very, very important is to avoid a local maxima of growth that is at any level, whether it's an IC level or at a management level, where you're creating a cookie cutter model of a competency matrix with a titular structure that pretty much goes down to everybody trying to tick the box towards their next appraisal. Why that's a local maxima? Everybody's focused on that rather than the enterprise value creation over the year. So I think one of the things that is very important to ensure that whatever is your appraisal process has a very strong balance of input orientation as well as output impact. Second one, genuinely believe that as ICs, having titular growth is actually the wrong model, completely the wrong model. And however tough it may seem to build an organization like that, trying to do that is my personal belief the right way. If you end up with the set of folks that strongly believe in true learning and growth by impact on the IC track and equally on the management track, I think on the management track also trying to have too many titles is just wrong. But there are certain functions that do need title, especially if they are external facing and there is a peering that is needed with industry. But on the IC track, that is not needed. That as a scaffolding actually brings focus into value creation, enterprise value creation, and growth by learning. So, one, reducing a titular structure. Two, creating a path of growth for ICs into a structure that genuinely leads into, like Dale mentioned, something like a distinguished engineer, a fellow, anything like that. Where when there's a fork in your career and you're choosing to be an IC, your IC path is not a glass ceiling from either the compensation side or from a decision making and impact side of things. I think is extremely important scaffolding. If we have some of those where titular pressure is taken away, growth is not sealed, and there is a choice of path that you can make at a fork of management or IC without either one having a negative impact to your career from a compensation or growth perspective, the choice will be the right choice. Yeah. Otherwise, I've seen, especially at Flipkart, we made a lot of forced choices of growing engineers into managers because that's the way that we could actually grow their career, I think it becomes wrong choices. And I've seen too many people fail on the management side, because management also is not easy. It feels very easy, but it's extremely thankless job. And for somebody who's not tuned to do that, but force them from a career growth, I think is very important.
Yeah.
So some of these principles of trying to keep a flat organization, trying to actually keep the scaffolding for growth right all the way to the top, and avoiding the local maxima and focusing on scope and impact of work, I think is the right way.
Very well summarized.
Um, so I think when you say right way, I think sahi way. Uh, sorry. The interesting bit is we've actually experimented with this. When I joined Swiggy, it was a very small team, and at that time we had a different problem. How do you create a structure? And very much as Rahul said, the idea that we came up with was how do we create an IC structure that goes all the way to the top. So there at Swiggy, my job was to build layers that allowed us to go from a STE1 all the way to a distinguished engineer. A distinguished engineer would report directly to me. So that person was parallel to all my senior vice presidents for all the different functions. So they had that authority over every tech platform across my team. And that really worked well because it created this independence of structure that allowed ICs to be able to speak their mind and in some sense control the managers from trying to push for timelines and so on. But that said, one of the learnings of Swiggy, which I've taken to Sahi, is exactly what Rahul said, that once you create levels and once you create titles, however well-intentioned they are, they will drive behaviors. And then you have humans who are going to pursue those titles because that's what we do. We pursue certain short-term goals. So if I see a business goal, that may be interesting. But if I see something where SD2 becomes SD3, that becomes even more interesting for me. So then I start to say, what do I need to do to become an SD3? And then I focus on what we used to call resume-driven development, where you like tick the box, कि अच्छा design चाहिए, चलो design, चलो एक review चाहिए with the leader. Let me go to the leader, have a meeting. Let me do one hour, check the box. And unfortunately, that my biggest learning both in Amazon and Swiggy, that my attempt at trying to create structure also resulted in people learning not so good behaviors in how they should think about their work. And rather than focus on outcome and rather than focus on the business, people started focusing on what do I need to do to check these competency matrices to get ahead. So at Sahi, we're doing a completely different thing. I had tweeted about this and even on LinkedIn, I had posted some time back, where we have removed all levels and all titles. Everybody in my team is a software development engineer, and every product manager is a product manager. And that goes from somebody who is 2 years experienced to somebody who's 17 years experienced in the company. I have no levels, I have no titles. I do have a very large compensation band. So that exactly as Rahul was describing is how we operate. Somebody can be an STE in my team, but their title, their compensation could start from something like 40 lakhs and could go up to uh,
Tell the number. Tell the number.
Yeah, you need to
we go up to 6 crores. We go up to 6 crores for somebody who's top of their game, right? And frankly, it can go to 10 CR for me. I don't care. Because for me, if that person is adding value, I would rather give that person disproportionate return than to say, no, you need to become ABC before I can give you that. So by doing that, by focusing the joy on the role, which is software development engineer, and saying, you do the best possible work, I'll take care of compensation, this conversation of promotion and titles has completely gone. We just completed our appraisal cycle, zero promotions in the org, zero attrition. Nobody ran away saying, yaar, mujhe ST2 nahi banaya, main ja raha hu yahan se. Nobody said that because people were very clear, job, evaluation. We did the performance evaluation, we had one-on-one discussions, we did calibrations, all of that. We just didn't give away titles. We just said, here's your money, here's what we think your value is to the company. They said, great, this looks awesome, life moves on. So we're in that experiment. I posted on LinkedIn. Interestingly, got a ton of pushback from people from Amazon. Some people even WhatsApp me, my old team members from 15 years back, like, this is totally wrong. It won't scale when you become very big. And I was like, why should I become very big? In the AI world, I don't need to have a very large company. The entire Sahi system is run by 14 engineers. App, front end, back end, everybody in between. Zero DevOps, zero QA. All of this is AI enabled through systems and through smart engineers. So in the new world, I do think if you are a sharp IC and if you have the ability to really leverage AI and the power, you can craft these large roles where, to Rahul's point, you don't need to chase titles. Find companies that value impact and chase big impact And like is often said, focus on accomplishments, rewards will follow. That's how I think the world will evolve. I think we'll get to the world very fast. We're seeing that even in the US, where small companies, a great example is Anthropic. Anthropic, everybody in the company is called member of technical staff. And if you go back to Anthropic and look at the people who are member of technical staff, they're actually CTOs of different companies.
Yeah.
The CTOs of Dropbox has joined as an MTS
That's
in Anthropic. Like they have just left their titles, left their fancy roles, and become member of technical staff. No hierarchy, no levels. Of course, the pay must be amazing. That's why they've joined Anthropic. But also the work is exciting, and that's all you need. Good, great work and great compensation, and then you leave all this other things behind.
Yeah, I'll take this moment to complete that Mike story. After we completed that project of writing the Java to C sub translator, he took me on a private yacht. So he did have money. SD2, he did have money, and ecosystem had obviously rewarded him for the impact. I think to bring it all together, I would really want all of us ICs to retain the positive traits that we have. I mean, those are awesome traits. Do not generalize them. Do not let go of them. Be curious. Best problem solvers, and so on. But keep this in mind that you are here to deliver impact. If you know what you're working towards beyond individual biases, it will take you a really long way. Cool. Thank you. And really enjoyed talking to both of you as always. Probably we should have one or two quick questions from the audience if you have any.
If it's a technical
Anyone?
question, we'll pass it to the IC. If it's a non-technical question, we can answer.
I see of past times to you. I'm sure nowadays you'll be writing a lot of code. Anyone?
I'm Chandrakant.
Yeah.
Good to have you here. Can see me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, though you look, very young, you have reached that much heights, but I would like to know about your daily routine. No, we see most of the time, right? I've read about Mark Zuckerberg and also Jeff Bezos, right? That they will wake up around 4 o'clock and read all the emails and talk to the important people, and then they'd go to gym, yoga for 1 hour and all. So I would like to know about yourself as well, like how your day will start and how you wanted to take the things positively to have a positive impact. Because we are human beings. Someday we will be like in good mood and someday we'll be in negative mood, right? Sometimes normal talk also will get you angry. So how are you balancing that? Yeah, I would like to know
Who is
about
the
it.
youngest here?
He looks youngest. He may not be the youngest, but he
Yeah.
looks youngest.
Also suggestions when we wanted to start, early stage, how we can build up that kind of thought process and creative process to be in the phase where we wanted to.
Look, I thanks for saying that we look young. Really appreciate it. Best compliment can get. I don't have a very great, sexy answer of getting up at 4 o'clock, doing yoga, any of that. I wish I had something like that. In fact, the real answer is that uh, I am in control of my day till 11 a.m. After 11 a.m., I'm hardly in control of my day. It's a bunch of context switching. I think there's a dual role, same with Dale also as founder and CTO. So I think the founder part of it actually means that every problem that the organization faces ultimately is our problem, and it's divided up between me and my co-founders. Because typically, as an organization, we start a little late. It gives me the luxury. I try to get into office a little earlier so that I am in control of my day. I can go through emails, I can read documents, spend time a little more constructively as my role as an IC of the things that I can do up to until 11, 12. The second half of my day is taken over by a bunch of meetings that are there, whether they're reviews, business reviews, design reviews, one-on-one conversations, etc. I think trying to actually keep up. The only thing that I have as a set routine is every night, post dinner, kids have gone to sleep, etc. I do spend an hour that to actually catch up and prepare for the next day. That's the only thing that has been fairly constant. Otherwise, difficult to get ahead of the next day or the next couple of days. Outside of that, I don't have any real fixed routine. Sorry.
Yeah. So for me, I think I have kids. I think kids have been the best way for me to get some structure into my life. So we wake up around roughly 5:45, 5:50 a.m. Not because I'm some Mark Zuckerberg, but because they have to go to school. A real problem that by 6:30 their bus leaves. So both my wife and I, we wake up, and then from 5:45 to 6:15, 6:20, we are getting their breakfast, getting them out of bed. 6:30 they're out of bed. Then we actually get to have like coffee. But then I do hit the gym every day, or I do badminton. So for me, fitness is a very important part of who I am. And so for me, at maybe 7:38, get to the gym, spend time there, try to do as much as I can. And then, similar to Rahul, like even in our world, our day starts a little late. The engineers come in by around 11, 11:30. So we don't rush into office. But because we are a broking entity, our markets open in at 9 in the morning in Mumbai. So it's pretty much around 9 we are online, either checking systems or watching systems. The um like the points about like how do you stay ahead and all that, I feel like some of this is just trying to prioritize time. One of the things that I have done is I've stayed off a lot of social media. So I don't at all like spend time on Instagram. I don't at all like spend time on like YouTube shorts. Sorry guys. But I do spend time on Twitter. And I use Twitter for learning because I find that Twitter has got a lot of people who post stuff, they share blogs, they share articles. Sometimes LinkedIn, but LinkedIn has become like a little bit like Instagram on text mode. So both hi bekar hai. So it's what do you do with the time? You always will have enough time. It's finally about choosing where you want to spend your time. And if you spend time on things that matter, you will realize that you're picking this up subconsciously. I don't go in every morning saying I want to study something, but when I'm reading stuff on Twitter and I keep reading, it turns out that 3 4 days later it comes back in my head and then I'm able to connect the dots. Okay, I remember reading that and this happened and this happened, so maybe that's how it's working. So I would just say spend a lot of time being very curious, being like read as much as you can. uh, I don't prefer video because I feel video is very limiting as a medium of learning. It's me telling you versus you being able to explore. So that's my thing. Night times, again, because thankfully market closes by around 3:30. That's the best thing about the job. After 3:30, we don't have to worry about downtimes, outages, and all of that good stuff, unlike payments, which is a always on business. So after 3:30, we do more of our tech work. We start thinking about like systems and next projects. But by roughly 8:30, we wind up. So we don't work crazy hours. After 8:30, it's dinner with the family, and then it's my time. And that's where again I get like a few. Maybe I sleep late. I sleep less, by the way. So that's another hack. Don't recommend it, but that's typically what what I do. So nighttime, I get time to do all the random browsing and catching up. So pretty much dinner, a few hours then morning after 6:30, between 6:30 and 9, a few hours there. That's the time that I get for myself.
Great. I think those personal insights also are good takeaways.
Yeah, if you have kids, then it solves for it automatically. If you don't
Get
have kids,
married.
you have to put an alarm. That's the only
Get
difference.
married. Yeah. Okay, we'll call it a day here. Thanks so much. Always insightful talking
Thank
to
you.
both of you.
Thank you, Priya.
Just want to thank you guys again. For me, what resonated and I connected with Rahul, your point on local maxima, and Dale, your point on people moving to Anthropic at an MTS role. It's just like if my glass is full, I change to a bigger glass and excel there. But you've given a lot of points on what you are looking for